Hello and welcome back to True Treats. Thanks for joining us for week 12. This week we have the New York Giants versus the New Orleans Saints. For the New York Giants we have a New York cheesecake, and for the New Orleans Saints we have gumbo.
First up is that New York cheesecake for the New York Giants. And our first step is to build our crust for our cheesecake. So all we need to do is take our flour, a little bit of butter and some sugar, put it into a bowl, mix the butter in nicely till it's a little chunky and flaky, then slowly add in cold water and continue to mix till the flour starts to bind together and you got a nice little ball of dough. The next step in the process for our New York cheesecake is to prepare the cottage cheese. To do this, we take our cottage cheese and we put it into a strainer with a bowl underneath. We'll use a spoon to work around the cottage cheese and help all the liquid to drain out into that bowl underneath, which will leave us with just our curds in the strainer. We will then take those curds and we'll use a beater to blend them to just about smooth so we can add it into the filling for our New York cheesecake. This will really help with the density and the thickness of our cheesecake once it's complete. Once the cottage cheese is ready, we can prepare the rest of our filling. To do that, we take our cream cheese, some sugar, and put it into a bowl and begin to whip it till it gets to a nice creamy consistency. Once you've reached that consistency, you'll sprinkle in just a little bit of flour to help with the thickness of our filling, and then we'll move on to our flavorings. The first of those flavorings is just a little bit of sour cream, and then we'll add in a couple of dashes of vanilla extract. You could also use a fresh vanilla bean and scrape out the flavoring from the inside. The last of our flavorings is going to be some lemon zest, which is essentially just the fine peel of the rind on the outside of the lemon. Sprinkle that into our bowl with just a little bit of salt, and then it's time to puree and slowly add in our eggs to get the thickness and the consistency that we're looking for, so it'll firm up nicely when we bake that cheesecake. Now that our extra filling is ready, we can go back to our cottage cheese that we pureed and we can fold that in and mix it all together, and the filling for our New York cheesecake is complete. Put that filling into the fridge and keep it until your crust is ready to go. We pulled that out, we took a rolling pin and we rolled our crust out nice and flat to just a little wider than the circumference of our pan. We use our roller to spread the dough right over the pan, and then we'll work it inside. You'll notice that this crust is slightly different from most cheesecakes because it's more of a pie-like crust. That works just fine. You shape it to the pan, use some scissors to cut off the extra dough and poke some breathing holes into your skin. Then you place it in the oven and blind bake it for about 10 minutes. Once the crust has blind baked, pull it out, pour all of your filling inside of it, then pop it back in the oven with a water bath to keep it moist and to keep it firm and from cracking. Then make up a quick topping while it's baking and your cheesecake is ready to serve. Now that our dessert is ready, it's time to make that gumbo for the New Orleans Saints. First thing we need to do is start with the holy trinity of onions, celery, and peppers. Chop and dice all of those up. Then we'll move on to our fresh tomatoes. We'll chop those up as well. And then to some of the meat in our gumbo, which is a linguiça sausage. We're also using some fresh chicken thighs, and we'll chop all of that up. We already thawed out our frozen shrimp from earlier, so they'll be ready to go when it's time to cook. We take our holy trinity of peppers, onions, and celery. We throw that in a pan with some salt and pepper. We cook them down. In a pan right next to it, we start our roux, which you've seen us make a few times here on True Treats. The main difference in this roux compared to others is the time length that you cook it. You'll want to make sure that it cooks down till it's a nice chocolatey consistent color. There you can see it right in the pan. That means you're going to get plenty of flavor for that gumbo. Back on the side, you saw us pull off our holy trinity and set those aside to add to the gumbo later. In that same pot, we prepared some wild rice, which we're going to serve with the gumbo at the very end. Next, we started adding our ingredients to our roux. We threw in our chicken thighs and our tomatoes with our garlic, some salt, pepper, a little bit of cayenne, some thyme, and some bay leaves. And we'll let those stew and cook down before we add in the rest of our ingredients. After stewing for just a little bit, we'll throw our holy trinity right back in. We'll add in our linguiça and our shrimp, and we'll stir that around and let it stew for just a little bit itself. After that stews for a couple of minutes, we'll add in a half a lemon freshly squeezed, put in a little bit of parsley, as well as some Worcestershire and some Vicious Viper hot sauce. We'll let that stew for just a little bit longer before we throw in our chicken broth. Once we squeeze in all of our chicken broth, we'll let that stew and simmer for about 30 minutes, let the flavor really develop, and then it'll be time to serve our gumbo over that fresh wild rice. Thank you for joining us here on True Treats for another week of Monday Night Meals. We hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Remember to check the links down below for more information that we just couldn't fit into this video. You can always find us on Facebook, Twitter, or Google+. Leave us a comment, let us know how we did, or send us a few recipes or a few stories about some times that you've cooked in the kitchen. Remember to join us back here for week 13 for more good food, and until then, keep on cooking.